Hello everybody, welcome to this video where we're going to look at a sample CLIL lesson plan template. This is just one sample of many different templates that you can use to plan a CLIL lesson. I don't know if this is the best one for your setting, for your content area, or for your school. But we have chosen to include this one here because it offers many different elements, some of which are essential, some of which are not, are more discipline related, but looking at them will help you make a decision as to what elements you will need in your own lesson plan, and also understand the rationale behind CLIL. What elements in a CLIL lesson make it a lesson plan. So having said that, let's jump right into it and look at our template. And just for your information, this plan has been adapted from the one found in the book by Coyle, Hood, and Marsh, which is a very good book, a very good introduction to CLIL, and it goes into depth about how CLIL started and what it entails in terms of teaching and planning. So as you can see, right under CLIL lesson, we have unit, level, and timing. Well, most CLIL teachers choose to plan units because due to the overarching nature of the CLIL objectives, sometimes it makes more sense to plan for a unit. And by overarching, we mean that CLIL objectives usually involve content and language and cognition and culture. And you do have quite a few objectives that you're teaching to and that you're going to assess later. So it may be better to just plan a series of lessons as opposed to only one. Which does not mean at all that you cannot use this template to plan a lesson. You can as well. But here you have the title of the unit and what it is about. The level of the students could include their grade level, grade 6, 7, 8, 10, etc. Or could also include their language level, B1, B2, A2, C1, etc. And timing here refers to the number of lessons that the unit contains. So maybe your unit will have 5 lessons. Maybe your unit could have, let's say, 10 to 11 lessons. But under that, you do have aims or standards. Most teachers, if you're teaching in a setting where the curriculum is set by the national government, so you're probably going to be working with standards or frameworks, some type of framework. Aims can derive from standards or frameworks, or if you're working in a more independent educational setting where you get to have more power over your curriculum, then you could, with a group of teachers and qualified educators, specify what your aims are. Again, each case is a case. We added aims or standards here so that you can start from whichever is used in your setting or situation. And the aims and standards will inform the teaching objectives. Like from those aims and standards, you're going to derive what objectives you need for content. What content are my students learning? What am I supposed to teach in terms of content? What am I supposed to teach in terms of cognitive abilities or cognitive development related to content and then language later on? What are the cultural implications of this content and objective, and how can I teach it? And communication is what language will my students need, or what type of language will be necessary for meeting the language and cognition and cultural objectives. And here we're talking about language of learning, which is, in summary, language that relates to the content that you're teaching. Language for learning, which is the language that they will need to engage with the content. And language through learning. And this refers to the language that will emerge as students are engaging with the content, right? So sometimes the teacher plans for teaching certain types of language or language structures or certain types of language related to the content. But then there's something else that emerges throughout teaching. So what type of language should the teacher be attentive to and should be ready to capture and share with the rest of the students? Because it will empower them as they learn. That's basically, in summary, what this means. In the same way that the teaching objectives come from the standards or the aims, then from the objectives themselves, you're going to get to the learning outcomes. And this is key, because when you have the learning outcomes, you know exactly what to teach. Because the learning outcomes are what students will be able to do by the end of the lesson. Why is this important? Because it's important to have a concrete idea of what your students are going to be using, whatever it is that they're learning for. And if you don't know that, how can you assess, right? So it's important also because from the learning outcomes, you will get to your criteria for assessment, which means, okay, what do I need or how do I need to assess the learning outcomes above? So that's what's important. And once that is clear, then we can get to the teaching and learning activities that the lesson will need, right? So in this particular lesson, we have, in this particular unit, we have lessons 1, 2, and 3, but you could have like 5, 10, 11, as we have talked about before. And you have your criteria for assessment above, but here you need to specify what instruments, what formative, what summative, what informal instruments, what observational instruments are you going to need, right? How are you going to collect data on whether or not students are learning or mastering the content? And scaffolding is a key component of any CLIL lesson, but here we did add differentiation to the lesson too. And you notice the two columns here because a lot of professionals like to set ways to scaffold for content and for language, but you could mix them. You could just merge this into one column and just add both types of strategies to the list, no problem. I just separated them for pedagogical reasons. But it's important not only to think about how scaffolding will be done, but how differentiation will be done, right? Because you may need to differentiate for students who are a little bit below standards, who are way above standards. So you need to think about differentiation strategies for those students, and not just how to scaffold learning in this case. And the resources are the resources that you're going to need, that we'll be using in the lesson. You're going to list them here. Notes or any notes, reminders that you need to make to yourself before, as, or after you go through the lesson. And reflection is basically once you have finished the lesson and you know that you're going to probably be able to teach, actually you know that you're probably going to need to teach this lesson again. What changes would you make to the lesson? What would you add? What would you remove? Etc. Right? It's always important. Even if you're not going to use this lesson again, it's important to know what elements from this lesson worked so that as you plan different units or lessons, you can make the changes or avoid mistakes that you have made before. But that's basically a summary of what our planning a CLIL lesson will involve, or a CLIL unit. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and don't forget to subscribe and watch our other videos.